All right. My name is Denise Gibson. I am the program director here at Town Square University Parkway. Thank you all for coming this afternoon. I would like to introduce April Moss-keeney. She is the program director for Neuro Challenge. She is responsible for making partnerships in the communities that serve to bring support and guidance to people with Parkinson's and their families. April has over 20 years experience working in long-term care, planning, engaging programs for seniors. So welcome, April.
Thank you, and welcome in from the heat. I know I was out there at my booth pretty much all afternoon, and I'm happy to be inside. So, we're going to talk about Parkinson's disease, and with show of hands, how many of you have heard of this disease? Okay, so pretty much everybody in here, that's good. Because we like to bring awareness, that's what our role is. So, let me get the clicker so I can actually not stand in front of the screen. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about understanding Parkinson's disease and the role of Neuro Challenge. We are a small nonprofit organization that serves the southwest region of Florida. And we're going to talk about what is Parkinson's disease. So, there's a lot to read here, so you don't really need to read it. But basically, it is a movement disorder, okay? It affects the ability to perform daily movements and daily activities. It is chronic. It is a neurodegenerative disease, so it's progressive. Basically, what it does is affects the central nervous system, and it does worsen over time, and there is no cure, okay? It's marked by a deficiency of a chemical messenger in the brain that's called dopamine. Anybody ever heard of that? Dopamine? Okay. So when people have low levels of dopamine, sometimes they have things like restless leg syndrome. Maybe you've heard of these things. Depression, anxiety, you could feel tired, moody, and definitely have apathy, right? Lack of motivation. So dopamine is a chemical in your brain that does a lot of really good things for you. And when it depletes because of Parkinson's disease, you lose some of those abilities, okay? So also it causes nerve endings, loss of nerve endings, and that's the loss of norepinephrine. And that's another chemical messenger in the brain that basically affects the sympathetic nervous system. And the sympathetic nervous system is what controls the functions of the body, like your heart rate, right? Your blood pressure, things you don't have control over. So Parkinson's affects that. And Parkinson's can be characterized by motor symptoms, which are muscular things that we do, and non-motor symptoms. Here are the early signs. I know a lot of people ask me, what are the early signs of Parkinson's disease? And this is just a short list, but these are the early signs. I'm not going to read them, but hopefully you are not experiencing these. And remember, if you are experiencing these, does not mean you have Parkinson's disease, okay? Because a lot of these symptoms, signs and symptoms, are very common with other chronic illnesses that we all might have. So, but I think it's a good place to start, that if you think maybe you have Parkinson's disease, you would want to look at this list first and say, you know, I have a few of these things. I should probably go to a neurologist now. The four main symptoms that a neurologist is going to look for are going to be shaking or tremors, and you've probably seen people who have, usually it's like a hand or an arm tremor, okay? They could have slowness in movement, we call that bradykinesia. They could be stiff or rigid. Usually that happens in the arms, in the legs, maybe just the trunk of their body, like they're not very fluid with movement, very stiff. And also they have a lot of trouble with balance. So when a neurologist pieces these four symptoms together and watches it over a period of time, they can then, looking at this kind of formula, they can then determine that you probably have Parkinson's disease, and then they're going to send you for something called a DAT scan. It's a scan of the brain, and that scan is not something you can just go ask your doctor for anytime you want to. That's a scan that a neurologist is going to prescribe if they think that they've been watching this long enough and have an assumption that you might have the disease. That brain scan is going to look for the lack of dopamine. Okay, so that's what it's looking for. Here are the most common motor symptoms that you see with people with Parkinson's. Can you still hear me?
It seems to go in and out,
Yeah.
and you have to sort of stand in that 6-inch area, I think.
Okay, got it. So see, here are the motor symptoms. Basically, the tremors that people experience are involuntary. So a lot of times people will go, stop tremoring. Well, people with Parkinson's can't. It's an involuntary movement. It's a shake. They can't stop that, okay? Usually it's rhythmic too. So if you notice that, it's not just something that's random. It has a rhythm to it. The slowness movement, the rigidity, all of these things are the motor symptoms that are most common. Does anybody have questions about these before I move on to the other type of symptoms? Nobody? Okay. I like to go point out the bottom one, swallowing and chewing, because this is a very important motor symptom that gets affected with Parkinson's disease. Often people will have a lot of difficulty swallowing and chewing food. And this can lead to choking or something what we call silent aspiration, which leads to pneumonia. And oftentimes that is what causes a person with Parkinson's to pass on. Something like a pneumonia experience, okay? All right, we also have these non-motor symptoms in the world of Parkinson's. These are things you can't see, but they're happening to the person with Parkinson's disease. And I'd like to point out that when you meet one person with Parkinson's disease, you've met one person with Parkinson's disease. What I mean by that is not everyone is going to display the same or present the same exact symptoms. Everyone is going to be on their own journey and it's going to affect them differently, okay? So these are the non-motor symptoms. If you've had like chronic constipation for maybe the last 10 years of your life, and it doesn't matter if you drink more water or eat more fiber, you still have this chronic constipation issue that you can't fix, that is a really big sign of Parkinson's disease, okay? Also, just trouble sleeping, and I'm not talking about the kind that you can fix with a pill. I mean like real trouble falling asleep, staying asleep. Those are signs of Parkinson's disease. Depression and anxiety go along with it. The apathy we talked about, that's lack of motivation, lack of drive, just lack of interest in anything. And then a weird one is loss of smell. And we all know about that from, the pandemic and COVID, right? Like a lot of people experience loss of smell when they had COVID. Parkinson's is like that too. Some people will experience that. And also some people will have a cognitive impairment to their memory or just their processing of information. And some even experience hallucinations, okay? And if they do have some of those symptoms, there's probably a presence of Lewy bodies in their brain, which is very common with Parkinson's disease. It's called Parkinson's dementia. These are the stages, okay? There are a lot of stages. There's 5 of them. Most people don't even know they have Parkinson's disease until they're in 3, which is very sad, okay? What I try to do is make people aware of stage 1 and 2. Because the earlier you get diagnosed, the earlier you can maintain your quality of life. So what happens in stage 1, where it's a mild case or stage of the disease? Basically, the symptoms are really mild. You're kind of only going to see them on one side of your body. It might affect only the right or only the left. That's why, like with Michael J. Fox, remember his pinky on one side was affected in the mild early stages of his disease, and he ignored it for 7 years, didn't tell anybody. What happened? It exasperated, it got worse, it caused other problems. So we really encourage people to pay attention to your body and what it's telling you. If you have any of these symptoms and signs early in the mild stages, you may easily just disregard them and go, oh, I haven't been getting good sleep anyway, so that's nothing. Or, oh yeah, I'm constipated because I don't drink enough water. Or, oh yeah, I'm having this problem because of this. And you'll blame it on other things because our subconscious does not want to acknowledge that we might have a chronic illness with no cure, right? So our subconscious is going to tell us to disregard some of these signs and symptoms. But we're here to tell you that the earlier you get diagnosed, the faster you can get on the right path to wellness, okay? So I'm not gonna go over all these symptoms, but there are 5 stages, and eventually when Parkinson's does get to the advanced stage of 4 and 5 is usually when the people are passing away, because the disease takes away so much by then. So who has it? Okay? First of all, I want you to know that Alzheimer's dementia is the #1 neurodegenerative disease. Parkinson's is number 2. Okay, so we are all familiar with dementia, but Parkinson's is number 2. There are 10,000 people affected just in the 6 counties we serve in Southwest Florida that we know about. And it is 2 times higher in men than women. However, women are going to progress faster through the stages, and they also have a higher mortality rate. Some other statistics, there are 1 million people in the United States today. 100,000 people are diagnosed every single year in America. And we're expected to see that be about 1.5 to 2 million by 2030. There are 10 million people worldwide right now with the disease. And about 15% are diagnosed earlier than 50 years old. We call that young onset. Okay? And then the average person gets diagnosed around 62 years old. So take a moment here to see if there's any questions so far. A lot of stats there, a lot of scary stats, so please let me know if you have questions. So now let's talk about what causes it. And gentleman in the red shirt here was talking about one of the biggest factors for Parkinson's disease is environmental. So there is evidence right now that tells us there's a link between Parkinson's disease and pesticide exposure or other chemicals like chemicals of war. So people who were in World War I, II, Vietnam, Korea, where we used a lot of chemical warfare, and it was rampant, and it was in the air, and it was in the water, those individuals have a higher chance of experiencing Parkinson's disease symptoms because they may have been exposed to those kind of chemicals. Also repeated head injuries. So like think of Muhammad Ali, right, who has Parkinson's disease. Is it possible that that's how he got it? Okay? Or people who are football players and have a lot of head trauma. And then there are other toxins, right? We talked about other toxins. And what are those? Those are just things that are in our everyday life. Bleach, right? Chemicals that you use for cleaning supplies, chemicals that are on our lawn. If you're a farmer and you're using pesticides or fertilizers. So all these kind of chemicals that come in contact with our skin, or we inhale, or we somehow ingest in the period of our lifespan is what is going to cause Parkinson's disease in some of us. Only some of us, okay? Because some of us have that correct gene component that makes it happen. So that's why when somebody might say, well, our whole family were farmers, but only brother Joe got it. Joe had the particular genetic portion, okay? Not everybody else did. So also there's a genetic factor besides environmental. That's the hereditary part. So if Uncle Joe had Parkinson's, am I gonna get it? Possibly. There's like a 10% chance, a little less than 10%. And we don't know why, okay? Then there's another component which is just called idiopathic. We really have no idea why some people get Parkinson's disease. We are not able to trace it back to any particular thing or cause or factor. Any questions so far? So let's say you're diagnosed with Parkinson's disease today. What do you do now? Anybody have a clue? Okay, so we at Neuro Challenge find people every single day who are diagnosed with Parkinson's disease because they call our office and they say, hey, my doctor just said that I have Parkinson's disease. What do I do? And in the beginning, when someone's diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, it's usually quite a shock, right? And a lot of people don't know how to handle it because it is life-changing. And it does depend on what part of your life you are in when you get this diagnosis. So let's say you are in your 40s, 50s, and you're still working. You have a career. You still are raising children or have a family to take care of. this is a big problem, right? Because you have a disease that's neurodegenerative and going to cause problems. And then it could be somebody in their 60s, 70s, right? And they're just getting into retirement ages, and they're like trying to enjoy their life, and they, wham, get this diagnosis. And then it could be people in their 80s when they're diagnosed, right? Or 90s even. And some of those folks are, unfortunately, they don't get diagnosed until something happens to them, and they didn't know they already had it for the last 20 years. So what happens with those folks is they have fall. Their balance is not stable, and they had a fall, and they end up in the hospital, and then after all these tests, they realize, oh, it was Parkinson's disease. Meanwhile, they didn't realize that they probably had it for the last 20 years, but they ignored that little tiny thing, that small tremor, or the constipation that they've been dealing with for 15 years. So that's why we're doing talks like this, to make sure you're watching yourself and really taking care of yourself, because the more tuned into your body you are and the symptoms that you're having, the more open you should be with your doctor, okay, to say, I'm having these symptoms. Could they be something else that I need to look at? So usually what happens is the neurologist will refer somebody to us, okay? But it could just be somebody finding us in the community. And what we do is we guide people who have a new diagnosis. You know, we take them on a little journey of what they need to do first, second, third, fourth, and we follow people for years, okay? Our organization has been here for 15 years in Sarasota, and we've expanded to 6 counties. But we have care advisors, and everything we do is 100% free. So our care advisors will take that person in. We're not a clinical organization, but when I say they do an assessment, it's a very loose assessment, and we basically say, well, where are you in the stage of your disease right now? Are you mild? Are you in stage 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whenever they come to us? And then from there, we figure out what services they might need. So, for instance, if we recommend that they need respite services, right, because they're in a more advanced stage, then we might tune them into Town Square, okay? And those are the kind of partnerships we make, and those are the kind of referrals we make. So there are a bunch of members to your team once you're diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. Obviously, there's you. You have to have a neurologist. We always recommend that the neurologist has an extra board certification called Movement Disorder Specialty, MDS. So yes, you can go to any neurologist that you want, but an MDS has a specialty in Parkinson's movement disorders. So, you know, think of your cardiologist, right? Or think of your doctor. If you had a real bad heart problem, would you just continue seeing your GP for that, or would you go to a cardiologist? You're going to want to go to a cardiologist. So it's like that. You may not want to just go to your GP or your regular neurologist, but you want this movement disorder specialist. We also recommend PT, OT, and speech on a regular basis, and usually your Medicare benefits, if you're of age, cover that every single year. So we recommend that. We also recommend that, you know, you might tune into getting a social worker or a case manager if that's needed, if you're in a different, you know, stage of the disease and you need a lot of extra support. We really harp on nutrition, because it's extremely important to drink a lot more water than you're used to when you have Parkinson's disease, because you're going to be on a lot of medications once you get diagnosed. And those medications need water to flush through and pass through your body, and also with the constipation issue with Parkinson's, we recommend a lot of water. We also recommend the Mediterranean diet when you're on when you have Parkinson's disease. And then if you have money for personal trainers, great, or join a gym, but you're going to need to exercise when you have Parkinson's disease. It is the only evidence-based, proven way to slow the progression of the disease. There is no cure, but it will slow the progression of the disease if you exercise regularly. Now, how much is regularly, and what does that mean? Well, some people, you know, it's whatever you can do at whatever stage you're in with the disease. But if you are newly diagnosed and you're still physical, you know, able-bodied, walking around, you really should be tuning into at least 150 minutes of moderate to high intensity exercise per week. Okay, that's what's going to slow the progression of this disease. So we help empower people to fight the disease, because there is no cure, so you really have to fight back and you have to be strong. We teach people how to manage the medications, because it's very challenging to manage PD medications. Exercise, nutrition, get your social support, join a support group. We have lots of support groups. And obviously having a positive attitude is what's going to change your mindset and help you get through this. Medications, there are multiple ones out there. I'm not going to get into all of them, but your doctor, your neurologist is going to prescribe a dopamine replacement medication, right? Because remember, there's the lack of dopamine up here. So now we've got to replace it. Now there's natural things that you can do to replace dopamine, but it'll never touch what the medicine needs to do. So you're going to need to get on medicine. And that medication, you know, it might start out with 1 pill a day, and it might go to 5, 10, 15 pills a day. It just is going to keep being adjusted as you go with the disease. All right, let's see what else can we go over. So we talked about exercise and how important that is. And what kind of exercise? Remember I said moderate to high intensity. Well, it doesn't really matter what you do, you just need to be moving. You need to be moving every single day, okay? Because that is what also helps to pump up your dopamine in your system. But it is, again, the only proven thing to slow progression. We talked a little bit about nutrition and how important it is to, you know, keep the constipation at bay and also strengthen your muscles with the right protein, limit your sugar, those kinds of things. And then we at Neuro Challenge offer all kinds of educational programs, kind of like this one we're doing today, but we actually have a really big one that we do every single year at the Bradenton Convention Center. It's called the Annual Parkinson's Expo. It's the largest of its kind in basically I think in the entire country really right now. But we get about 1,500 people in person to this event, and we bring top-notch neurologists in to speak from around the country. It's a pretty big deal. We have a lot of vendors there. So it's where you're going to get your education. It's where you're going to get the most current and relevant research information on Parkinson's disease. Okay, and that's what Neuro Challenge brings to this area. Social support, we talked about it. We have a lot of, we have a lot of support groups, so we really encourage people to tune into them. Support groups are where you're going to get your network of other like-minded people with the disease. You're going to talk about your challenges. You're going to talk about like, oh, you know, what's Joe doing over there, and what's Mary doing over here, and you kind of figure out, you know, if you can benefit from something somebody else is doing right. You might be able to help somebody. So networking is very important in socializing, keeping your socialization going. All right. And, you know, we talked about positive attitude, and that's very, very important because, again, the mindset and the apathy start to seep in, and also anxiety and depression start to increase with Parkinson's disease. And so what happens with a lot of people is that's what takes them down because they can't seem to overcome the mindset that you need to have when you're faced with a disease like this. All right, and so Neuro Challenge, just, you know, we talked a little bit about it, but here's the 6 counties we serve. Right now we have about 3,500 people, even though we know there's really around 10,000 in the counties we serve, we have about 3,500 that are currently going through our programs every single day. And we have a better approach. We know we have a better approach. So what's the approach that we take with people? We have programs every single month that are free for people to take advantage of once they have Parkinson's disease. The programs are not only for Parkinson's patients, but for the care partner, which is very important because the care partner is actually going to be the person struggling alongside the person with the disease, okay? We also, so besides educational and support ones, we partner with different agencies and companies in the 6 counties we serve to bring therapeutic programs. So we mean like boxing classes. We have a partnership with the Sarasota Ballet that's a seasonal partnership. You can go down to the ballet studio and take a class every single week during the seasonal partnership that is a chair exercise class. And I'm going to tell you, I've taken that class. It's no joke. Okay, it is a tough class. So people are like, oh, it's ballet, you're just probably doing this and this. No, it's a tough class, it's a good upper body workout, and it's set to the seasonal ballet music. So those are the kind of partnerships we make in the community to bring free programs to people with PD. That's what we do. We also have, I told you about the support system. Again, we have those care advisors, they'll guide you through it, they're like your personal guide. We also have a mentorship program. That's something you can just call our office and say, look, I'm not ready for programs, but I just want somebody to talk to, and we'll hook you up with a mentor, okay? And those mentors are people with Parkinson's disease who are seasoned, been through it, and they'll listen to you, and they might, tell you, some good advice. So the mentorship is made for people who just need somebody to talk to about their issues. And then we put on a lot of big events. And if you want any more information about Neuro Challenge, we are on the web. So we do have a website. We have a lot of great things. We have a calendar with click-through programs where you can register directly and you can join us for anything. So does anybody have any questions?
I have one.
Yes, sir.
As we know, because you already stated, it's no replacement for medication, of course, but you had mentioned there's some natural things that people can do to help. You mean mainly nutrition?
To help with Parkinson's
With
disease?
the Parkinson, maybe dopamine replacement. And again, stating, I know it's not going to replace medication, but
Yeah, so
every little bit could help. Maybe.
Yeah, every little bit helps. So dopamine, okay, we get it naturally, right? Your body makes dopamine. The problem with Parkinson's disease is that because of the chemical imbalance now happening in your brain, which originates in your gut, by the way, okay, so this is all coming from it's a gut-brain connection. The toxins get in through your gut somehow. You either consume them or they absorb into your skin, gut through your system and are in your gut. Then they eventually make their way to the brain. They take away your dopamine, which then causes all these symptoms, okay? But if you do things like exercise, make great social connections, laugh and have fun, love, right? This rises the dopamine naturally in your system, okay? It's never going to replace what you've lost. It's just never going to be enough. But there are drugs out there, right? There are medications out there that are going to bring it up. But when I say natural, it's always good to keep those things going so that it kind of keeps flooding your brain with a little extra natural dopamine rather than synthetic. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure does.
Yeah.
And they mentioned Mediterranean diet seems to be the best, not necessarily vegan or vegetarian or Mediterranean seems to be the way to go.
Mediterranean is what is recommended right now by all nutritionists and neurologists that are dealing with Parkinson's disease. And one little thing that I'll add, and this is I don't want anybody to go crazy with this one, but I would go with organic produce if you can. Okay. If you can afford it and if you can make that happen in your life, I would go with organic, because if you're already fighting the symptoms from toxicity in your body, why would you add more toxins in by eating foods that continue to have toxins? And then we know that they do.
All the pesticides.
Pesticides, fertilizers, the coatings they put on your apple so they look beautiful in the store.
Could genetically engineered food make a difference too? Or have they figured that to be any?
Gee, I don't know about that. That's a good question. I don't know about that because I don't know if there's any toxins in those. But I would definitely try to eat organic if you can handle it. But definitely the Mediterranean diet is what was recommended.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. Well, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
I just want to let you guys know too that here at Town Square we're starting a Parkinson's support group as well. The first Tuesday of the month actually. From 3 to 4 I'll be working with Fox Rehab. He has a doctorate in physical therapy, and I'm sure we'll be bringing in Neuro Challenge as well to help consult there. So we look forward to that. But thank you so much, April, for being here.
Yay. Thank you. Yay.